Welcome to Reselling Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're here for another Monday mini-sode.
Yeah, our Monday minis are our YouTube exclusives, where we get an opportunity to kind of dive into one topic for a short amount of time. It's like a shot of espresso. You know, if you want to sit and enjoy a full-length podcast, tune into our Wednesday podcasts. Anywhere you get your podcast needs met, we're there, right? Like we're on iTunes, Spotify, Google, all the places. And we got like an hour and 15, sometimes more. We've had like 2-hour long episodes before in the past. So where we cover a lot of different stuff. But these episodes are really short. We're talking about one thing. So without further ado, today we're talking about the 90-day total on eBay. And let's be honest, when you are looking at other sellers, you're on Instagram, you're new to reselling, you see that 90-day total that you have, or you see somebody else's 90-day total, that's like a number, man. Like you look at that and it's like, it can do a lot of things. It can like really pump you up, or it can like totally crush your spirits. And you can be like, man, I am failing. I'm not as good as this person. But the reality is that 90-day total is a really, really skewed metric that can be a useful tool for you if you know how to use it properly, but it doesn't tell you everything. And so today we're going to be talking about that 90-day total and why maybe you don't need to pay as much attention to it as you probably currently are.
And it's a really strange tool. So let me get controversial here for a moment. I don't understand why eBay does this. So number one, that 90-day total sometimes shows that total before buyers pay. So I've sold an item, buyer hasn't paid, but then my 90-day total went up. Yeah. Right. So I could maybe sell like $1,000 item and it'll push that 90-day total up. The other one is eBay does not deduct the shipping, which to me, it's not a true number, right? Especially let's say you sell big items all the time and you're spending $100 on each item that you ship. And let's say you ship 10 of those items, it's adding an extra 1,000 to your 90-day total. And so I would say, make sure you understand what that 90-day total means. And it may be great for you, but understand that part of it is how much are you paying for your goods, right? There's going to be a big difference with the person that, let's say we use a $10,000 number, okay? The person that goes to the bins and spends maybe $20 a week, okay, is going to have far more net profit, especially if they're selling clothing and maybe they're charging shipping, than the person that is a Nike reseller and is paying, maybe out of that 10,000, right? Let's say in a month, right? 10,000, the bins person spends $80 a month. The Nike seller, right, is spending $5,000 a month, right? That's a big difference. Both can have the same 90-day total, but both can mean totally different things.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why you kind of got to look at the 90-day total as a tool that you can use as like one potential measurement for yourself. Like if you know the type of selling that you do, 90 day after 90 day, year after year, you're kind of looking at that number. And if you can see trends and say like, hey, my 90-day total maybe in the summer is a little bit lower, but it tends to be this amount. But this year, that 90-day total in the summer was a little bit higher, but I haven't really changed the goods that I'm selling. Then I can use that data to help and say, hey, I'm improving, or I've made more this summer than I have in the past. But again, you're comparing it with the data that you know very well, which is your own, and not comparing it with other people's. Because when you're looking at other people's, it's really tough to say because that number includes so many different things, especially like you said, it includes things like shipping. It doesn't factor in the cost of goods. And even like you said, somebody could be selling, whatever their 90-day total is, they're selling higher end stuff. Somebody else is buying really cheap items at the bins. But again, it doesn't factor in the amount of work that you do. Like somebody could be you could have two people with a $10,000 90-day total, and one person sold 5 items and they spent 10 hours total sourcing, cleaning it up, taking pictures because they know their niche. They bought the right items. They found the
5 Rolex watches,
and they're crushing it. Right. Yeah. Whereas somebody else is like, I spent 100 hours. I spent 1,000 hours. I shipped out 400 shirts that I had to measure and take pictures of for the same amount of money. So the 90-day total, again, is only showing you a snapshot of your store that doesn't really show you the amount of hours you put into it, the expenses you put into it. So you really do need to be careful there.
Yeah, agreed. Now, the other thing is, And this is a shift for me. I used to really focus on how many active items I had. Now, I do think there is a place that you need to have a good amount of active items, especially if you're a full-time seller. Like I would say if you're a full-time seller, I know even then, I don't know. I would, to me, 1,000 is safe. But I know plenty of full-time sellers that have like 200 or 300 items. They just have incredible sell-through, right? They're always selling. And so that active number, I would not see that as a measure of success, right? I could have 5,000 items, but if I'm only selling a handful of items a day, right? I'm not even selling a 1% every day of my 5,000. I'm really going to be hurting for money. Right. So you got to make sure that you're at least selling 1% of that number. So it's not necessarily, hey, I have 10,000 items and so I'm going to be good. No, it's about, hey, I have 10,000 items and I'm making sure that I'm selling 1% of those 10,000 items every single day.
Well, again, that number, that metric may work for the type of selling you do. Whereas for somebody else, that everyday number, that might not be it, right? Because if you've got, hey, I've only got 100 listings in my store, but as long as I sell like 10 of them this year, I'm going to make a living, right? So again, you're not looking for, I need to sell 1% a day or a month or what. It really depends on the type of store you have, the type of inventory you have, which again is why it's really tough to kind of look at when people say like, hey, I've sold this number, how much have I sold? And your own store is going to change too. Like in the past, I used to sell far more items that were kind of cheaper. And now I tend to sell fewer items, but the items that I sell are a little bit more expensive. And that's been a shift over time. So again, even comparing my, year over year, like this year is very different than last year. I may have made more money, but I sold fewer items. And that actually was a victory for me. Whereas, it could be that I made less money, but I sold more items, or I made more money, but I sold more items, and I could have ended up actually losing because I was working way harder, or who knows, right? So those numbers change. So yeah, the total number you have active isn't the only thing. Even the total number you're selling isn't the only thing. You kind of have to compare it to how does your store work. So it's so hard because a lot of times eBay sellers are going to tell you, like, again, yeah, as long as you have X number of items, or as long as you sell 10 items a day, or they'll try and break it down. Like if you sell 10 items a day at $10 profit, then that's $100 a day, and over 360, you're going to make X amount a year. And it's like that's again, it's not the whole picture. So you really gotta be careful.
And that's a great point, because like the store that everybody knows of, I don't sell 1%. Like I should be selling, like I have, over 3,400 items. I should be selling 34 items a day. Right. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I end up selling 30 plus items. Some days I sell 15, but of those 15, 5 of them are $200 items, right? So I'm making $1,000, take out the fees. I'm making at least $800, right? And so, yeah, that's something to think about. But make sure you do that. I strongly encourage you, take a look at your 90 days, okay, your total, and then of items that you have active, okay, and then end up dividing that, right, over 90 days to see how many items take your numbers sold, right, and divide it that 90 days so you can see how many items you are selling a day, right? And then you got to compare that to take your number of how many items you have active and multiply it times 1%, and does that match up? Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, because maybe you're only selling 0.5%, but if you're making good enough profit, which is the next thing I want to talk about, then you're good. So then the other thing you can do is you take, how much you made, right? How much you made, and then you divide it by the items that you sold, and you see what your average selling price is, right? So if you are realizing that you're only selling items that tend to,
I feel like we need like one of those math, like we need a board up here where we're like,
that's true. You're right.
Because it's starting to get very mathy here.
But let's say you have, you over 90 days, right? You sold $3,000 worth, okay, and then of those $3,000, right, that was 300 items, right, over those 90 days, right? So 3,000 by 300, that's what you do. Do you do division, right?
You need a calculator for that.
Yeah, so that means that each item that you know what? I just want to make sure I have my numbers right, okay? I have advanced degrees, all right? We're going to end it there.
I said we needed a board to do the math on, but I don't know if you're dividing 3,000.
All right, but that means each item that you're selling is $10. That's pretty rough. That means you're grinding, right? And if you have free shipping, you're grinding even more, right? For that 90-day total. Like you said, right? You can have somebody working 100 hours a week to make the same amount that somebody is selling maybe, 10 vintage shirts for that $3,000.
Yeah. And again, you're looking at average there. So, you may have a handful of items that sell for a few dollars and a handful of items that sell for a couple $100, and you're looking at an average number. And again, even that isn't a perfect indicator, because you might have things that are just really easy to ship. Like I sell, I've sold 20 of these items at $3 a piece, but it literally takes me 5 or not even 5 minutes, just a minute. Like I grab the thing, I've got a bunch of them, I slide it in a package, slap the label on, I sell 10 of them a day. It takes me 10 minutes, and I'm actually my hourly rate ends up being higher than something more expensive that I sell that takes longer to ship and takes. So you looking at that average is important. What you kind of want to figure out is kind of what's that hourly rate? Like how much time are you spending to make that 90-day total, and what were your expenses in there? And that'll give you that hourly rate. Because one of the things we look at as resellers is this actually worth it as a side hustle? I can go in San Diego, we have really high minimum wage, right? It's like 16 something an hour, which the cost of living here is out of control. So, it doesn't end up being that much, right? Where I'm planning on going in Texas, the minimum wage is still like super low, like $7 an hour. So
wow. If
I were to go say like, hey, it's the summertime, I'm a teacher, I'm going to go get a minimum wage job. You figure you put 10 hours in, you're getting $70 pre-tax. That's brutal, right? Like you're really not making very much. But if you figure, okay, I'm reselling, you could easily be only making $7 to $10 an hour, even if that 90-day total looks high, if you're not paying attention to how much time you're spending. So yeah, you want your cost of goods to be low, or the total sell price of your items, like the ROI to be good, or the amount of labor that you're putting into it to be low. So if my 90-day total includes, hey, I'm selling 500 Pokemon cards each month, and it takes me a minute, 30 seconds tops to like put it in the bag to send it out. Even if I only made $2 on that, it's fine, because they're so fast, they're so easy. If I sell 20 of them in a day, it's going to take me 15 minutes to send those out. So that ends up being, almost ends up being $100 an hour, even though it's like, I only made $1 per item or $2 an item. If you look at it as an average thing, that doesn't sound good. So again, you have to compare it to the total amount of time and energy you're putting into it. So a 90-day total of, hey, I made 3,000 this 90 days, but I only spent 4 hours working on that 3,000, versus, hey, I made 3,000 and it took me 50 hours, 60 hours, 100 hours. Like those are totally different things.
Yeah. So just be careful there. Now, the one number I do think is the best number to evaluate how you're doing is how much you are selling, your sold number, in comparison to your active. I'm a big believer that if you have a really huge active listing number and you have a really low sold number, it's not great. And again, I'm talking about myself. Like I've gone down the road, especially when things got really bad, where I was like listing, and things weren't selling. And it's just because my items were probably priced too high, or I wasn't running enough sales, whatever. But once I started getting that sold number up, I saw it continue to go up. And then I continue to see my 90-day total go up. And when I started doing, the calculations for my net profit, it definitely mattered. And I would say myself, I would love it if I got my store that has over 3,000 items to, I may have 3,000 active items, but I have 1,000 to 2,000 sold over 90 days. Like that would be a beautiful number. That means that I'm getting items, I'm moving them, and I'm continually being able to turn that into more items and building that inventory. And so I really don't care how low my active items gets, unless it gets crazy low. If my sold items keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. Yeah, it's a good problem to have. So keep an eye out on that number. Yeah. All right. So hopefully this helped. I know we got into a little math and charts and calculators, but hopefully it helped. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling late.
Peace.